Hey everyone, Deepcut here. Welcome back to Cartoon Universe. We have another video coming later this week talking about all of the indie animation that came out in 2024 and what to look out for in 2025. But along the way, I found this one show that really stood out to me in particular, Monkey Wrench. Now, Monkey Wrench is an interesting show because it does have a larger extended cast, but its core cast is really just two mercenaries, this skinny guy named Shrike and this boxy guy named Brown, but who is also referred to as Beebs or even Beard in the show. Skinny Shrike and boxy Beard here are just two alien dudes who started a mercenary team to take on odd, often sketchy jobs in order to earn money and compete with other mercenaries. Beyond the core cast of Shrike and Beard, we meet these other teams in the very first episode, who our main characters will continue to run into in different adventures. The first episode does a good job of showing the conflict they have despite being something of colleagues because they are constantly competing for the same jobs, with the first episode having all these different teams fighting over this one silly bird. Now, our two heroes are designed to be opposites, not just visually with skinny Shrike and boxy Beard, but they have the classic crazy roommate setup, with Shrike being impulsive, self-serving, and chaotic, with big ol' Beard being calm, logical, and sympathetic. Despite the very real conflict this causes, with Shrike often spending money he isn't supposed to, Shrike does seem to be truly grateful for Beard taking him in as part of his team, as most of the other mercenaries see him as a dead weight who would have died or been arrested a long time ago if not for Beard. Beard, meanwhile, seems to genuinely appreciate Shrike as a person. He didn't team up with Shrike for any particular skill that he had, and instead, Beard seems to really just enjoy his company, even if their different personalities can make it a bit difficult to share a living space. Shrike tends to like to watch his mindless cartoons and be loud, whereas Beard likes to play music and be more social or introspective. At the end of the day, however, what Beard really wants is just to appreciate the time he has with whoever is in his life, which right now is Shrike, and Shrike really appreciates it when Beard tries to take time to indulge in his cartoons with him, and Shrike even returns the favor by trying to listen to some of Beard's music. It's a really fun setup for what is currently just a friendship, but a dynamic I'm sure a lot of people are interpreting as romantic over time. Each episode focuses on a different mission so far, with there being 4 episodes out and more planned if the show can keep making enough money to animate it. But the real fun beyond this classic friendship setup is the crazy lore that serves as the backdrop for the world, and which is growing more and more into the overarching plot. Right now, the show focuses primarily on the different alien species from across the galaxy, but we only get rare glimpses of humans who appear to have gone extinct. In Monkey Wrench, the humans are referred to as Terrans, with Earth commonly being referred to as Terra in different sci-fi movies and TV shows because of the type of dirt making up so much of our Earth. Terrans are explained in episode 2 of the show to be an important part of the galactic history, according to Shrike. He says this in their defense, as Beard often talks about them with a negative tone, with Shrike more so finding them fascinating, but they apparently wiped their own species out of existence. In episode 3, we learned this was due to some catastrophic event that the humans had set in place, with the imagery in the show and use of words like fallout making it a clear parallel to a nuclear event, though its effects go well beyond just some explosion. This event is talked about very cryptically in the show, indicating that the people may not actually know what happened. In episode 4, we learned that the Great Cataclysm occurred only just 8 centuries ago, with it creating a massive giant green quarantine zone that the regular species of the galaxy are not allowed to go into. Those who go into the radioactive zone risk becoming a plague walker with a radioactive infection. This is said to have a 97% mortality rate, but in that same episode, we met one of the rare plague walkers who journeyed into the quarantine zone and made it out alive, although he is clearly now radioactive. The quarantine zone is a place said to have lots of Terran treasures, something Shrike in particular finds fascinating to even just look at, even if he can't own it for himself. He also loves Terran food like pizza, and even Terran cartoons seem to be very popular wherever Shrike is from. Shrike seems to be from a culture influenced by Spanish-speaking Terrans in particular. In fact, Shrike seems to only be able to speak Spanish, with the audience and Beard only understanding him because of the universal translators that are common among the different species. Shrike doesn't just speak Spanish, however, and the Terran cartoons that he watches appears to be very Spanish culturally, focusing on a character that is a duende, a sort of Spanish trickster spirit. The Terrans seem to live largely in the quarantine zone that exists today, with all of them dying in the catastrophe that was created or being a mindless radioactive zombie ever since. According to the Plague Walker from episode 4, who survived the quarantine zone and found Terran treasures, the Terrans had worshipped some sort of false idol that ended up blowing up their part of the galaxy. Since then, surviving species are said to become mindless drones, though with this Plague Walker that doesn't seem to be the case. Outside of the humans, there exist many species who are of sapient intelligence and humanoid bodied, but most of them just look like Earth animals that have evolved into a sapient state. While they may have existed outside of the Earth, or Terra in some form, the implication to me here seems to be that the humans actually guided the evolution of these different aliens in the show, perhaps even splicing the DNA of Earth animals and alien species with human DNA in order to create all these different hybrid species that they guided in different directions on different planets. I could be wrong about that here, but there is this constant symbolism in the show of alien species having an effect on other species that are disguised as positive and revealed to be pretty sad. In episode 2, for instance, while Shrike explains the impact Terrans had on culture and the positive things that they contributed, we see our main characters act out a similar story with smaller aliens known as Lithops that the Terrans seem to act out with everyone else. In this episode, our duo found themselves on a planet that was about to blow up due to natural causes, and for which they've been hired to supposedly save a small species of rock crystal aliens called Lithops. These aliens embrace this opportunity because they actually have a prophecy of being saved by a Shrike-like figure, which seems like a pretty obvious nod to the idea of ancient aliens. The theory that our own mythology was started due to alien life forms coming to our Earth and teaching us advanced knowledge. Despite the claim that their mission was to preserve this species, Beard and Shrike learn that their seemingly nice grandma that sent them on this preservation mission was actually just trying to turn these little Lithops into raw material for weaponry. Here, we get a story similar to that of the Terrans, who came in with seemingly supposedly good intentions, spreading their culture to other planets, but who ultimately destroyed an entire part of the galaxy. In the end, the Lithop prophecy was correct that their species was saved by Shrike, but only because they ended up saving one of the Lithops while all of the others were killed by the grandma. It's explained here that as the last surviving member of their species, the government will actually give a job to the Lithop in their system. And when this is explained, Beard looks over at Shrike with a sad face as if this happened to him. Shrike later confirmed that this is the case, explaining why he wears this red suit that everyone else associates with the government. It's something like a police uniform and a job that everyone has made clear Shrike has messed up, but the only way to get it removed is surgically, so Shrike just continues to wear it everywhere he goes, despite no longer being in the Red Forces. This was a job he was given by force essentially, seemingly as the last of his species. We see even more evidence that Shrike is from a nearly extinct species in the very first episode, when we see character files being pulled up for Beard and Shrike. Beard is known to be Walrinian, or a species of walrus people, which are very well known and given a certain sense of respect throughout the galaxy. But Shrike's species is written as entirely unknown. There have been jokes behind the scenes of Shrike being modeled after a glass squid, and that makes sense when you look at his hair, which is actually just tentacles. The Terrans seem to have a really strong effect on whatever world Shrike came from, very possibly from within the quarantine zone, with Shrike being from some rare offshoot of his species that managed to escape. Entire species were either wiped out or turned radioactive in the quarantine zone, such as the Ngari mushroom people explored in episode 3. And Shrike may have only survived because his people 8 centuries ago happened to move out of the quarantine zone, leading to him eventually being the only one left in his dwindling species. The big thing tying all of this together is the overarching story about a strange container with something from the quarantine zone that Beard and Shrike end up having to deliver. We saw it first in episode 1 with its green essence confirming it's from the quarantine zone, and later Beard and Shrike are convinced to take it to its destination, but are not given the warning of potential death that comes with it. Whatever the item is, it will undoubtedly link the quarantine zone and whatever is actually going on there to our actual characters. The series gets into big themes of spiritual hive minds, particularly in episode 3 with the introduction of those Ngari mushroom people. These were a mushroom species that can communicate more so spiritually, likely inspired by the real-life spiritual experiences people have while on psychedelic mushrooms. Most anyone can tap into the spiritual communication in this world, it would seem, with Beard being able to do that when he is listening to music that synchronizes to his emotional state. The Ngari people were said to become a mindless hive mind after the cataclysm of the Terrans, and with all this in mind, it seems to me that the cataclysm itself is some sort of negative hive mind that is trying to forcibly unify the galaxy, instead of these abilities naturally evolving like they had with the Ngari people or with Beard himself. Whatever this green thing in the container is will likely involve spreading the unifying force outside of the quarantine zone, which will likely have influence over characters who seem to retain their original personality, such as the Plague Walker seen in episode 4. Despite getting riches and wanting more for himself, he keeps insisting on telling Shrike and the others how to get into the quarantine zone, despite it being clear that no one is asking how to get there. It's as if he thinks he's still the person he was before getting the plague, but is being puppeted by a bigger, scarier force. The same force that the Terrans had worshipped that had convinced them to eventually create this cataclysm, even if by accident, manipulating them in ways they didn't even realize. But for more information, check out the show. Even with all the lore explored here, there's a lot of actual plot and story that I didn't get into, including the big story of the assassin character Haro. I'll put a pop-up here at the end of the video that you can click on to go check out episode 1, and of course I'll put a link in the pinned comment down below. Let me know what other indie or niche cartoons I should check out soon, and if you want to talk more about indie cartoons, consider joining us in the Cartoon Universe Discord, link in the pinned comment down below. See you guys next time. Man, I do love running, especially when it's away from women who are madly in love with me. But one thing I never run from is another man. Well, 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 if it isn't my arch rival, Racer Rabbit. Shady the Bat, you're here for the magic crystal as well?